This is Jilliana Ranicar-Breese, and this is part 2 of my interview with Stuart Mattson in Tangier. Go ahead, Stuart.
So,
We're talking about the move from Soho to Chelsea.
yeah, and but actually, I got very involved in the art world because I was working in a creative industry, and basically developing as a brand strategist, as a account planner. I was basically developing a story for each of these brands, and so I felt also I wanted to keep that story relevant and like ahead of the curve. So I really embraced myself in creative cultures.
So which brands, or any that I would have heard of?
Oh, I did everything from Hershey's chocolate to American Express to
Okay, big names.
yeah, big names. And I worked at leading agencies. I actually was just thinking I worked at 8 different agencies over a 40-year period or 35-year period. And in New York,
Who were the big boys then?
So I started at Ogilvy and Mather, which is now just called Ogilvy, and I worked at then I worked at a smaller boutique agency, and I worked at Euro RSCG. I worked at Saatchi and Saatchi, which is now just called Saatchi, and I worked at McCann in China.
McCann Erickson, yes.
In China, and so I've worked at big agencies and smaller boutique agencies.
Okay.
And I have to tell you, I think I like smaller boutique agencies better,
right.
Because less bureaucracy.
So were you invited to Shanghai?
Actually, what happened is there was a real shift in advertising because when I was doing it was TV and print, and everybody wanted to do TV. Most creatives wanted to do TV because they were building their reel. And so they could use their resume basically, and they would have a reel. And actually, I was one of the first account planners to, when I went to a job interview, I'd say, "Here's my reel." And
Excuse me, what do you mean, your reel?
Basically like a deep. Well, that was when the VCRs were around. So you had a sample of all of the work that you were involved with.
Oh, your portfolio,
Yeah,
but it was visual.
It was visual. And usually TV, everybody wanted to see your reel.
I
But
see.
as an account planner, people never really showed them the work they did. And so all of the people I interviewed were really impressed that I was so involved with the creative process that I had my own reel. And anyway, yeah, I guess that was when I was working. That was really my identity. Was this person who was right brain, left brain. Very much involved in the intellectual process of doing research and understanding the brand, but then also very involved in the creative process of briefing the creatives and helping. Sometimes I even did the work myself.
Okay.
I tended to be more of a visual person, so I tended to bond much more with the art directors. And I actually found the best creatives that I worked with were art directors who also were very strategic.
Okay.
And not only and most planners tend to focus on the verbal and on the idea, but I took it further, not only to explain, what is the message for this brand, what's the brand story, what's the backstory of this brand. So I would.
Were you doing storyboards as well?
I actually wasn't doing that, but what I would do is when I did the research, not only did I talk about the message, but I would talk about the look and the feel. And I feel like the look of the brand and the feel of the brand and the image of the brand is
the packaging
is just as important.
Yeah.
So I would, in my briefs to the creatives, I would most people would just talk about the message and then verbally talk about the image, but I would also bring in a lot of visual stimuli to say, and here's how the brand should look, and also bring in stimuli from poetry, music, and say, this is how the brand should feel.
Okay.
And so creatives really liked my briefs because I gave them, they weren't just starting with a blank piece of paper. I gave them a lot of information to stimulate their thinking.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah. So it was fun, and I actually think I'm a frustrated art director because I was always attracted to the visual. And maybe even a frustrated painter. I've started painting recently.
Yeah.
When I was
well, Morocco, where you now live, is such a visual feast.
And also the
work, colours and the textures.
But the work that I really like calligraphic work. I think I'm very very involved with shape, form, and line, and particularly line. And so even though I don't understand Arabic and I didn't understand Chinese, I couldn't read Chinese. You have to learn something like 300,000 characters in order to really understand that language. But I was just really attracted to the look of that language. And without knowing what it said, I was attracted to the look. So, like, my favorite artists are Bryce Martin, there's a woman named Elliot Bouquet, and all of that work is very...
American,
and very... very line-based and very, almost melodic.
And what about Moroccan art?
So
have you met any artists?
I have met artists here. Actually, one of my friends, I'm just buying a piece by a woman named Rima, and she's a Syrian Palestinian, and she's lived in Morocco for, I think, 13 years. And her work is very much up my alley. It's she does ceramic work. She has a studio in London, and
So you have an apartment here now. So do you put everything up on the wall? Have you brought all your possessions?
I haven't brought all my possessions, but every time I take a trip back, I take more art. So
So you still have a base in America?
Well, actually, no. I moved out of New York. I don't like what's happened to New York.
Have you put your stuff in storage?
So I put my stuff in storage. My parents have a 7-car garage, so I took
7 cars.
7, and they only have 2 cars. But it's chock full of They live in the northern Michigan, so snowmobiles, and they call them 4-wheelers. So they have vehicles and.
So you have your things stored there, do you?
So I took over one of the garages and had my things stored there. But I'm gradually bringing over stuff. Because actually, when I was collecting art, I think it's really, I really wanted to build a collection.
Yeah.
And one of my good friends when I first moved to New York was a critic named Henry Galsheller. And Henry talked a lot about, he was actually one of the most influential critics in the 60s and 70s. He basically created pop art. And the term pop art. Really? He worked at the Metropolitan and also worked at the Museum of Modern Art. And Henry, an artist friend of mine, rented the ground floor apartment of his place, and so I got to know Henry really pretty well.
Are you going to create a foundation? You don't have any children.
No.
And you've never been married. What are you going to do with all your art, your possessions?
I actually would like to. I'm already started giving pieces to museums.
That's what. Yes. Yeah. You don't want to create a small museum of yourself by your.
No, I think I probably will, and I've been building this collection. I'll probably give the collection to a museum.
In America?
In America. Yeah.
Not in Morocco, then.
I haven't thought of that. Maybe Morocco, but
you'll get a tax break in America, won't you?
Yeah. But I think actually where my parents live, I was just there for 2.5 months taking care of my father. And I've got to know, traveling back and forth there, the director of a museum. And I've already given her a few pieces, and I'll probably give them the whole collection.
Yeah, so it'll have your name and can be a foundation.
I guess.
Why not?
I could do that. Yeah.
Why not?
But
we'll continue talking about that in part 3. Thank you very much.
Okay.